Today we're going to talk about the Electoral College. And I have to assure you, before we even begin, I am not making this up. You hear people talk about having a pocket constitution? Well, this is a pocket constitution. And if you look at Article 2 and you look at the 12th Amendment, it will explain to you, I hope it will explain to you, how the Electoral College works. Because there are, in toto, for all the states and the District of Columbia, 538 electors. It represents the number of people in the U.S. House of Representatives, 435, and 100 senators, plus 3 more for the District of Columbia. So the more populous states get lots more seats, but every state starts with those 2 Electoral College votes that come from their 2 senators. So in a sense, you could say that Wyoming's voters actually get more bang for their buck in the Electoral College because, after all, a very small number of people are choosing 3 electors. Whereas, in reality, what the candidates are looking for is the Electoral College votes of the big states, basically the top 10, and then a few others that are called swing states or battleground states that go back and forth and deliver the difference between winning and losing. Why do we have this thing? Why don't we just go by the popular vote? The reason, to put it simply, is that the founders, the framers, the founding fathers of the country, as they're sometimes called, when they wrote this Constitution back in the 1780s, had real doubts about whether or not the raw vote of the regular people, the ordinary population, was the wisest way to choose a president. They were afraid that somebody might just get the majority of the popular vote, but not be truly reflective of the country as a whole. And remember, in the 1780s, they were only contemplating letting people vote if they were white men who owned property. So there was already a fair amount of elitism operative, and they just extended that to saying, we're not so sure that a lot of these folks are all that smart about the way they do their voting. Fortunately, in most of our history, we haven't really needed to care that much because the Electoral College seemed like a formality. But here's the hard truth of it. We don't elect the president on election day, we the voters. We elect people who are called electors. And they meet a month and some later. This year it'll be on December 19th in each of the 50 state capitals, and they elect the president. Our role as the voters on November 8th is to decide which set of electors gets to do that in our respective state capitals. And these people can sometimes be party officials, but they don't need to be. All they need to be is eligible to vote citizens who are willing to stand as electors for a particular party. By and large, the parties want to make sure that they're good, solid members of the party. They don't want to send some total stranger trusting that they will vote for the party's nominee. We have occasionally had people who have been, for one reason or another, led to vote for someone other than the person they're supposed to vote for. They're sometimes called faithless electors. They cast what might be called protest votes. This has not determined the outcome. But if a lot of electors proved faithless because they had, for some reason or another, lost their faith in their party's nominee, they would be legally empowered to vote for another person if that was their judgment. We haven't seen that done in any kind of organized way or any sort of consequential or substantial way, but it in theory could happen. And while it has clearly come under a certain amount of scrutiny and doubt and objection in 240 years, it has never been eliminated. Yes, that's really the way it works.
And that is it for the Electoral College. Now, I did have another video. We're not going to watch it right now, but down here in the bottom, his name is CGP Grey, and he has a lot of actually really fun, entertaining comments and just explanations about government stuff. He's pretty much going over the Electoral College, so we're not going to watch it right now because we have another one of his videos that we'll be looking at. But he does a really good job of explaining stuff, but he does do it very fast. So, we're only going to watch one of his videos. But if you want to check out more of his stuff, he has a pretty good YouTube channel. So what has changed and what could be changing in the future? Not much overall since the foundation of our Constitution. In the beginning, the Vice President was the person who got the second highest votes, like I said. But now, because of the 12th Amendment, electors vote separately for the President and the Vice President. So when it goes to that Electoral College, they have a ballot for presidents, ballot for vice presidents. And now, because of the 22nd Amendment, presidents are limited to 2 terms. So as far as presidential election goes, not a lot has changed. Now, what could change in the future? Because some people don't like the winner-take-all system, where whoever wins gets all of the Electoral College votes, and they don't necessarily feel that their vote is the most represented. So, there is this new kind of trial being done. I think Maine is actually one of the states doing it. I think there might be a couple more states, but I don't remember. And some other countries have already done this. It's called the alternative vote. We're going to watch a video about it. Some people call it, I forget the other term they use for it, but it can be referred to as another thing. But I will refer to it as the alternate vote. So we're going to go into a little alternate reality where animals get to vote. Listen to CGP Grey explain it, and then we'll talk about it in class.
Queen Lion of the Animal Kingdom is displeased. She recently introduced elections for the office of king using the first-past-the-post voting system. While her realm started out as a healthy democracy with many parties running candidates for king, it quickly devolved into 2-party rule, with the citizens not liking either one, but trapped within the system because of a problem called the spoiler effect. However, one of Queen Lion's subjects from a distant land, Wallaby, has a solution: the alternative vote. What's the difference? To find out, let's follow one voter on election day, Red Squirrel, under both systems. There are 5 candidates running for king, 2 members of the big parties, Gorilla and Leopard, and 3 other candidates, Turtle, Owl, and Tiger. Under first past the post, Red Squirrel gets a ballot where he picks just one candidate. Red Squirrel really likes Turtle, and even campaigned for him. However, he knows that his new neighbor, Gray Squirrel, is voting Gorilla. And what, starts to wonder Red Squirrel, about all the other animals? Who are they going to vote for? The debates on the Animal News Network only had the big parties, so Red Squirrel thinks it's going to be a close race between Gorilla and Leopard. While he's indifferent toward Gorilla, he's deathly afraid of Leopard. Because he can only pick a single candidate, he gives his one vote to Gorilla in hopes of preventing Leopard from becoming king. This is strategic voting, and it's a necessity under first past the post. But now let's look at the alternative vote, which Wallaby explains to Red Squirrel. Instead of picking one and only one candidate, he can rank them in order of his most favorite to his least. He goes into the voting booth and gets the same ballot as before, but now puts Turtle as his first choice, Owl as his second, and Gorilla as his third. He dislikes Leopard and Tiger equally, so he stops filling in his ballot and drops it in the box. At this point, Red Squirrel doesn't care exactly what happens. He has other things on his mind and he heads off. But you, dear citizen, want to know how the votes are counted, so here goes. Turtle, beloved though he is with some of the citizenry, comes in last place with only 5%, and he is eliminated from the race. Because the voters rank their candidates in order, we can know what would have happened if Turtle didn't run. Without Turtle, voters like Red Squirrel would have picked Owl instead, so their votes are transferred to her, as though Turtle was never in the race at all. This is why the alternative vote is sometimes called instant runoff voting. It's able to simulate a bunch of elections where the least popular candidate is eliminated after each round, without all the time and expense it would take to run a bunch of campaigns one after another. The alternative vote method keeps eliminating the least popular candidate until someone either wins a majority or only one is left. As no one has a majority yet, the next lowest candidate, Tiger, is eliminated. Tiger voters listed Leopard as their second choice, so she gets Tiger's vote. In the last round, Gorilla is eliminated. Gorilla voters listed Owl as their second choice, so Owl gets those votes, wins a majority, and is crowned king. The alternative vote is a better system because it produces winners that a larger number of voters can agree on. While the alternative vote does have its flaws, it's important to note that any problem AV has, first past the post also shares. They're both susceptible to gerrymandering, they aren't proportional systems, they can't guarantee a Condorcet winner, which math geeks hate but there isn't time to explain here, and over time they both trend towards 2 parties. That being said, alternative vote has a huge advantage that first past the post lacks and makes it mathematically superior. No spoiler effect. Imagine one final election. 2 big candidates are running, Gorilla and Leopard looks set to win 55 to 45, but then a third party candidate, Tiger, enters. Tiger manages to convince 15% of the Leopard voters to back him instead. Under first past the post, Guerrilla now wins, even though a majority of the voters didn't want him. Under the alternative vote, because all tiger voters put leopard as a second choice, leopard still wins because a majority of the citizens of the animal kingdom would rather have her in charge than gorilla. Using the alternative vote, citizens can help support and grow smaller parties that they agree with, without worrying that they'll put someone they don't like into office. After examining the differences between them, Queen Lion decrees that the alternative vote is to be the rule of the land for electing the king, and everyone is happier. Well, almost everyone. The two big parties can't be as complacent as they used to be, and need to campaign much harder to convince their voters to support them. This has been the alternative vote, explained by me, CGP Grey. Thank you very much for watching.
So, he has a lot of good videos. I highly recommend checking him out. Might watch a couple of videos. So, we'll be talking about the alternative vote in class a little bit. What are some pros and cons, but I'll go ahead and cover some here. So, would the two main political parties approve of it? Well, it gets rid of the spoiler effect, which they both dislike, but it also means that a lot of people might vote third party before the two main parties. So, are they willing to possibly lose out on some sections of votes if all the states do it? It seems that quite a few people, based on polls, seem to like the idea because it feels that they could actually put people who they actually want to vote. They wouldn't necessarily feel like they have to do a strategic vote. But in terms of actually then counting to vote at the end of one, if you're doing hand ballots, you have to recount every single hand ballot after every single run through, which is a lot. Are you using computers to help with the process? Is that could those be hacked? Cause more problems? How long is this going to take if you're doing it all by hand? There's a lot of background administrative questions that kind of need to be answered with it. So, a couple states are trying it out. If they have success, then that's one of the things that our government is kind of set up to do, to allow states to try new things before being implemented at a federal, national level. So, we'll see if it becomes popular and if other states start doing it, or if it just kind of remains an outlier that a couple states do. And with that, we're coming down to the last section, state and local government.